Hey, Bo here. Today we're going to make a little pillow for the 4th of July this summer, and I wanted this for my front porch. And I like the antique look. I love the little buttons that represented the stars, and all you need is some red material. I chose pattern. You could do red and white, and then a little bit of denim patch, and it just came out really cute. So all I did was take a sack, and the sack is the size of the pillow that I wanted. So I just marked off the lines and the square, and then I measured each and added some seam allowance. And then I cut some strips. I got these fat quarters from Walmart, and they match really well for the red stripes, and then created a template for each stripe, adding the seam allowance. And then once I did that, I just kind of set it together and see if I liked it, and I did. And I had some lace that I got on Amazon that is kind of thin. I use it for crafts. It's not real functional for clothing, but it works real well, and I thought I would add a little dimension to the red on the stripes. You certainly didn't need it, but I thought I would just add that for a little bit of texture. So I went ahead and applied it with some stitch witchery is what I call it, and it's just something that you buy at Walmart, and you iron it on, and I use that to keep it in place so that when I sewed it, the lace was not moving around. And then here I'm just kind of laying it out to see what it looks like, alternating the red and the white. And then of course overlapping for the seam allowance. And again, it's turning out to be the size that I like. And then there's the little patch. And then now this is what I call the stitch witchery. It's very handy for clothing. And I'm just going to use it and you certainly don't have to do this either. I'm using it to kind of glue the stripes together. And then when I go to sew the seams, sew the red and the white stripes together, they're already kind of glued together, so to speak. Now, when you iron, if you're going to iron this way, it doesn't show here, I ended up using parchment paper, because the stitch witchery, the little glue strips will come through the lace and get on my iron. So once they're kind of glued together, they're just a little bit easier. There's no pins involved, and I just stitch all the seams. Very easy project. Now this is some red material for the back of the pillow. You could use white, you could use blue, anything you have around the house. And then you have to turn it inside out. That's what it will ultimately look like. The biggest thing is the buttons, sewing them on. It's tedious. Here I'm just kind of arranging them to see. Online I saw somebody, she had white hearts and she kind of mixed them in. So this is kind of a look, and I took a picture of it, and then I put the buttons on the ironing board, positioning them the way I thought that they would look good, and then started sewing them on. I didn't sew each button and then cut the thread. I just passed on to the next button to try to keep things going. And then it got a little easier to just do this slightly off the edge of the ironing board. A little bit easier, but like I said, it is a tedious project. And you just want to distribute the buttons here and there. And I would stitch the button about 4 to 6 times. They don't really need to be super sturdy like a regular button, just enough to stay on. And it kind of looks like a constellation by the time you flip it over, because all the little threads connected, but that's not going to be seen. And then it's just time to sew it on the red and white stripes. Now, one thing I did do on the blue strip was I sewed around the square, and that showed me where to keep the buttons within, because I had to sew the blue square on and I didn't want any buttons in the way. So I'm stitching over the stitching here. And with the kind of quaint rustic look, I thought it added a cute little look to it. I didn't really want it perfect. Here I clipped the edges. I didn't wash anything, so you could trim that or not. I had to be kind of careful, because when I sew the pillow together, I'm gonna, right where I'm clipping on the ends, I needed to be able to have that outer edge sewable. But ultimately, I want these edges to kind of fray a little bit. So it's time to sew the back to the front, and I'm going to put the pillow in the side, and so I sewed the corners, all the corners with a little opening on the end to put the pillow in. And I would advise getting a pillow or the polyfill. I didn't want to use up all my polyfill, so I just have a pillow that happened to fit in this, but I didn't have it planned out, so you might want to plan that out, get a pillow, and then measure accordingly. So there's the pillow that I've had sitting around. Thankfully it fit. And then I did not sew the seams inside. I sewed them out so that it would be easier to sew. And I wanted that little frayed look. I'm going to use the pinking shears on the seam at the end. So just a quick close-up of the pillow, which is tricky. It was tricky because the pillow was really stuffed in there. And then it's time to use the pinking shears, and I started on the right side. It was hard to see. I didn't want to cut the seam. So flipping it over to the red side was a lot easier, so I would not cut the seam. So there we go, not bad. I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's a cute little pillow. It looks really cute outside. This is a great summer project, and if you give it a try, send me some pictures and let me know how it works for you. See you next time.